Well, that was an exciting panel on powering data, and now we're going to hear about connecting data. But let's start with a message from our session sponsor, TRAC, and Matt Conrad, Vice President of TRAC, is going to join us. Matt is no stranger to us. In fact, when I think back of all the 6 Convergence conferences, Matt has been at every one, as Matt was at the highest level at VCU and helping Mike Rao run that institution. So Matt, great to see you again, now with TRAC.
Good morning. As John said, I'm Matt Conrad, and I'm here today for the first of hopefully many times as Vice President of TRAC, the panel sponsor for the Connecting Data conversation. But, as he said, this is my 6th Convergence. I've never missed one. My earlier participation was through VCU and VCU Health, institutions that remain essential to the strength of this mega region, alongside the other institutions of higher education. Talent, research, and a healthy workforce are the foundations of any economy that expects to compete. Representing them for over a decade shaped my view of what real regional progress requires. So, stepping away after that long wasn't simple, but Convergence has always challenged us to look forward. So, when TRAC came calling, first through the person of my colleague Ashley Peace, who's here with us today, I saw the chance to keep doing consequential work from a broader platform with issues that now play out at regional, national, and global scales. That's the frame for today's agenda: powering data, connecting data, securing data, and ensuring access are not academic topics. They are the operating system of a modern economy, and the Connecting Data session goes straight to the core: land, large-scale campuses, fiber networks, subsea cables, cloud interconnection, and the power systems that enable all of it. That is where this corridor's competitiveness will be won or lost. And that is the world TRAC Capital Management, my company and the sponsor for this panel, is built for. TRAC Capital Management, for those of you who do not know it, is an alternative asset manager, which means we are a private equity firm deploying billions of dollars in equity through our businesses verticals to deliver not just digital infrastructure, but properly framed critical infrastructure for a modern economy and global competitiveness. Toward that end, at TRAC, we've acquired roughly 30,000 acres across 17, growing to 20 states, to build hyperscale campuses at unprecedented scale. And while we operate nationally, Virginia remains our leading focus. We have thousands of acres under development or contract on the Richmond side of this corridor, and we are actively looking east to 757, because the full power of this region depends on linking those assets, and we see tremendous promise in it and the work that we are all doing together. Through our operating companies, TRAC acquires and master plans these large data center campuses. Fleet, our second company, develops the vertical data center infrastructure on them, and our forthcoming entry into power will bring the integrated energy solutions this industry now requires through an all-of-the-above approach. Many of you in this room are building related pieces of the same ecosystem. If the I-64 Innovation Corridor intends to lead the next chapter of economic competition, the work at the center of the Connecting Data session is exactly where that leadership will be earned. And we at TRAC are grateful for your invitation to be with you today and for the opportunity to sponsor the panel. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, we're so pleased to have this all-star panel, and it's being led by Vinay Nagpal. And I want everybody to know that Vinay is part of our secret sauce. He's a consultant on our Global Internet Hub committee and attends all our meetings and has really helped us from the beginning to understand digital infrastructure and has been my personal tutor in all these years. So Vinay, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, John. Very much appreciate the partnership. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to be with all of you here. John and I first talking about this initiative a couple of years back, and I told him up front that it's going to be a significant task for him, to say the least, in terms of pulling together 2 regions together and really giving a broader perspective on digital infrastructure across 2 different regions and the impact of that across different, local economies and communities. And I would say that in a short period of time, the team has done phenomenal job in terms of, where we are at overall in this initiative, and still a long way ahead, long road to go. But I think the recognition for this region, I must say, has been global. John and I and some of us here from the room were recently in Lisbon, in Portugal, at an international conference, and we got an opportunity to talk about this initiative there. And it's just been absolutely phenomenal. As John said, I work closely with the team on the project Global Internet Hub initiative. I've been in the data center connectivity industry for the last 31 years, and continue to work on various different global initiatives. And we have a star cast of speakers today. I really want this to be a good session for all of you in terms of understanding, learning about the background for even this region, how it's becoming what it is now as a truly global internet hub, some of the background around subsea cables, data centers. I have personally lived in Virginia for the last 26 years. For the most part, it's been in Northern Virginia, yes, and I've seen that area obviously converted from farmland to the data center hub that it has become, globally speaking. But we're going to talk about all of that and more. And what I'd like to do is kind of just to do some level setting. We have about 50 minutes of panel discussion. I would encourage all of you to take advantage of our star cast here and save your questions for the end. We'll save about 10 minutes for the questions. With that said, well, I'm going to go around the speakers, give everyone an opportunity to, one, introduce themselves, two, talk about their background, and also share, at least at a high level, their involvement, engagement in this particular region. Hunter, take it away.
Thank you, Vinay. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation. Thank you all for being here. My name is Hunter Newby. I am a landlord for networks. The network infrastructure business I started, the first deal I was part of was called Telex. It was out of New York in 60 Hudson Street, which is a carrier hotel. I came up with the concept of what's known as the Meet Me Room. I can't say Meet Me Room in rural America. People think I'm in the dating business. So today I just refer to them as internet exchange points, and I'm obviously very happy to see internet exchanges on the list of things that are important to this region. I've diligenced the country, followed all the long-haul fiber route maps, found all the other 60 Hudsons, and set about buying as many of them as I could 25 years ago. 21 years ago, I bought my first carrier hotel, 56 Marietta Street in Atlanta, Georgia, and then I've just bought many since then. I design, build meet me rooms, manholes, and I organize things for network operators to make their lives easier, and they return the favor by paying me rent forever, and I like that. I want to focus on subsea, though, North Atlantic subsea in particular, 60 Hudson, International Gateway. Back in those days, all the networks in the North Atlantic basically went through there, and I organized a room in the building and a business model where they all interconnected. So I'm very familiar with what's happening here now. It's an evolution. I've been watching this happen for 25 years. And Eric, my friend over there, he was the CEO of GlobeNet, which is a submarine cable to Brazil. He'll explain that. He was one of my customers. So thank you all. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hunter. So keep in mind, real estate, network, and neutrality. Extremely, extremely important. You'll be hearing more on those themes as well. Doug?
Hi, good morning. My name is Doug Schmidt. I am the inaugural dean of the School of Computing, Data Sciences, and Physics here at William & Mary. I've lived here about a little bit less than a year, but my roots to this region go back over 100 years. I graduated with a bachelor's degree and master's degree here at William & Mary in 1984, 1986. My mom graduated with her degree at William & Mary in 1960, and my great-great-uncle was a professor in the School of Education from 1923 to 1930. So I have a long history with this area. I focus primarily on topics related to middleware, software development, mobile applications, and of course, most recently, AI. And also very recently, I was appointed by President Biden and unanimously confirmed by the Senate, probably the last time they did anything unanimously, to be the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation at the Pentagon. And so I was there until coming here. So I have a lot of long history with the military industrial complex. My mom, when she graduated from William & Mary, she had a minor in Russian, so she got snapped up by the NSA right away in the 1960s. which is where she met my father, who was an ensign in the Navy. So I am a product of the Navy and the NSA, believe it or not. And so I have a lot of interest in national security related topics and look forward to discussing those. And these topics here are very relevant to that.
Thank you so much, Doug. I think it's phenomenal to have someone truly representing not just the next generation, but generations to come in terms of ensuring that we have the right kind of programs in place to really educate and train the next level of workforce that's coming in. And also another perspective Doug brings is really, utilizing this infrastructure in the academia part, which we'll touch upon. As Hunter mentioned, right? So you got network, you got neutrality, you've got real estate, but subsea cables has been a huge, huge factor for our region in general, right? 2017 is when Maria, the first subsea cable, landed here in Virginia Beach from Bilbao, Spain. My previous company was DuPont Fabros Technology. Microsoft and Facebook were two of our key tenants at the time on the data center side, and they got together and brought in with Telxius, a Spanish telecommunications company, the Maria subsea cable. But we have with us Eric, who has a lot more background than even that, which he'll talk about. Eric, over to you.
Thanks, Vinay. Thanks very much for having me here.
Hey, can we turn up the mic, please? Thank you.
Hello. Hey. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me here today, Vinay, for the invitation. This is absolutely awesome. For the last 20 years, I've been in subsea, and believe it or not, most people still believe that the global internet is held together by satellites. The reality is about 99% of the world is connected via these very thin, long-haul digital infrastructure cables that connect the planet. And they're growing incredibly fast. The factories are full. The number of cables that are being deployed by Google, by Meta, by operators in the world, we haven't seen this amount of activity ever before in our market. So for about 20 years, I was a CEO and chairman of a company called GlobeNet. We operated a subsea cable that connected the United States with Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Bermuda. And in that context, a couple things happened. One is my good friend Hunter and I would get together all the time and say, how's the world changing? What do we need to do? Where are the next points of interconnection? And he reminded me last night that at one of those lunches, I drew up a little diagram on a napkin, basically saying we need to land the next cable in Virginia Beach. So 10 years later, here we are. He still has a napkin.
Yeah.
And we love maps. So you really sit down and say, what is the demand? Where is it going to? Who's going to drive that demand? And so I was involved in many subsea projects, Maria, one of them, that eventually went to my competitor, but we looked at what do we need to do to connect the planet? And that is what's happening today. So within that context, I was appointed the president of Suboptic. That is the global trade association for subsea cables, where we have everybody represented in that ecosystem, from the builders, the operators, the people that lay the cables, the ship owners, and so on. And I realized that we were all aging, but we didn't have a generation of successors. So we created the Suboptic Foundation with the main purpose to develop educational programs, allowing us to attract the young to the industry. Because if it is not for the hidden gems, the hidden infrastructure that we have today that is powering the world, subsea cables, data centers, fiber networks, and so on, none of the cool applications that our kids are using, or we are using, are going to work. And so we really need to attract the young to the industry so that we can build the infrastructure that's necessary to support what is yet to come. So thanks for having me here.
Absolutely, Eric. Thank you. And these subsea cables are so vital, as Eric said earlier. This is an FCC statistic that 99.7%, yes, 99.7% of all global internet traffic traverses through subsea cables. People think of internet and they look up on the sky thinking it's satellite. It's only 0.3%. That's very, very minuscule in the grand scheme of things in terms of what's currently been pushed across the satellite. So I mentioned earlier about the Maria cable. 2017 is when that landed in Virginia, and it really ever since then is continuing to evolve, change the landscape of not just this region, but across the Commonwealth. And I want to set that stage. Currently, there are 636 data centers across the state of Virginia in 22 markets. Again, 22 markets. Yes, Northern Virginia is the leading data center market globally. That constitutes 200 plus data centers. It's important to put it in perspective that more than 400 data centers exist outside of Northern Virginia, and that is a combination of Mecklenburg, Henrico County. I saw earlier my good friend Anthony Romanello, who's done a phenomenal job in really bringing Henrico County to the global map as well, not just for data centers, but across the entire digital infrastructure. When we look at what happened in Hampton Roads with the subsea cable landing, there's a second landing being put together, and now what we are seeing across the I-95 corridor, which we'll talk about. So it's important to have a complete view across the Commonwealth and what this digital infrastructure means. And across, when we see the various different components, neutrality is extremely important, across the board. And Hunter, I want to kick this off with you to kind of give us a better sense of, one, even in your career progression, how you have truly harnessed some of those fundamental principles across, being data center neutral, being carrier neutral when it comes to interconnection facilities, when it comes to even what you're seeing for this region and the potential.
Sure. Yeah, as you said, Vinay, neutrality, it's the foundation, fundamental. And what does that mean, basically, in a real estate sense? It means the building is not owned by a carrier. And traditionally speaking, that type of building in the telecom world would be known as a central office. And you've got some. Verizon has a central office here and whatever. Carriers don't trust other carriers, and they're smart not to. So they don't like to invest capital in bringing their network and equipment into a competitor's building, because then they would be limited to only selling to that competitor. So the premise was born out of the need to interconnect, at least in the business that I started, Telex. We were originally a carrier, and then saw the need to actually get directly connected to other networks that I was buying and selling with. So I eliminated the third-party network, and then just decided to be in the real estate aspect of the business. That was in 1998, 99 timeframe. That held true, because if it worked in New York, it was going to work anywhere and everywhere, and was just a rinse repeat. That's now a new concept in places where I'm building today. I'm building a new facility in Wichita, Kansas right now. Out of 125, there are 14 states in the United States that don't have one single internet exchange in the state. Yet there are billions of dollars from the federal government going to broadband for fiber in those states. So if you know where the home is, where's the fiber backhaul to? Nothing. It has to get backhauled out of the state to get on the internet.
You want to take a second and explain to our audience what an internet exchange does?
Sure. The internet exchange is actually a function of a service provider that operates what's called an Ethernet switch. I do not want to get technical here, but it facilitates the interconnection of IP traffic over that switch, kind of like an airport or a train station where lots of different lines meet. And then that switch sits in a cabinet or rack, whatever, inside of a building or a room. And that building or room is known as an internet exchange point. So the real estate or physical place is the point, and the switch itself is the IX or internet exchange. That is a function of interconnecting IP or internet protocol traffic. That is not a data center. I rail against the term data center. I don't like it at all. It has so many definitions that it basically has none. It takes 15 minutes to pre-qualify what anybody means when they say it. If it's single tenant or multi-tenant or cloud or hyperscale or enterprise or whatever, those are different functions. They require lots of power. Everybody knows that. That was the earlier panel. Interconnection is a very specific thing. You have a very well-known and robust interconnection point in Ashburn, Virginia at Filigree Court. There's a whole history there. We go into that. You have really great ones in this area, or Henrico anyway. You got Pixel Factory and Ashland, QTS. And then you got a smaller facility down at Virginia Beach. It's something we need to talk about. Within those facilities, though, particularly Pixel Factory, you have this internet exchange operator called DKIX. They're from Frankfurt, Germany. They're the largest internet exchange operator in the world. You are all very lucky to have them here. You should have them expand into Hampton Roads. And it's a very particular type of function that sits in a very particular type of building that's run a certain way that must be neutral, meaning that owner of that building, like me, I'm not in the network service business. I don't compete with my tenants, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah, and we got Scott Brown here. Scott, please stand up for 1 second.
Yeah, I was
Scott's done a
pointing towards you.
phenomenal job in terms of kind of facilitating that neutrality across, thank you, Scott, facilitating that neutrality across an internet exchange point. And what that truly means is, as Hunter was talking about, right? That's the infrastructure that enables Microsoft, Facebook, Google, others to interconnect with each other in a common platform, very important common open access platform. And that's happening in 3 locations in this region today. It's happening at Scott's location at Pixel Factory Data Center. It's happening at QTS in White Oak Tech Park. And the 3rd location is EdgeConneX. And we have plans to expand, and we need to bring that to Hampton Roads. If that's one takeaway, that's one very important one, to bring that neutral internet exchange point so that traffic can be exchanged locally and the local traffic stays local. More on that to come. Doug, let's switch gears. Talk about, so far the infrastructure we have talked about, what we have touched on. What does that truly mean to you and to William and Mary from an academia perspective, and what are some of the use cases?
Sure. So I've been a computer scientist for the past 40 years, but before then, when I was here as an undergrad, I was a sociology major, majored in sociology, got a master's degree in sociology. And one of the things I remember was Maslow's hierarchy. If you recall, the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization, and underneath is basically basic human needs: food, shelter, reliable Wi-Fi. These are the important things that we sometimes take for granted. And I look at all the great investment we've made, the previous panel, all the work on the undersea cables, the power infrastructure, the high-speed network infrastructure, the data centers, or whatever we're going to call them now. And that's great, but really what we're looking for are a few layers up to that hierarchy. And the things that we get excited at in our school here at William & Mary have to do with curating and vetting the data, using curated and vetted data in order to train or fine-tune and or use AI models, being able to develop software applications that are secure and robust, and then perhaps most importantly from my point of view with my dean hat on, making sure that we're educating the workforce to be able to use those technologies effectively. And I think that's really what we're looking at here. If we want to build a mega region that is going to be competitive with places like Research Triangle Park or Silicon Valley or Austin or Route 128, we need to think holistically on how to leverage the infrastructure and then start building applications that are going to make us special. So obviously the medical domain, there's lots of need for high-speed data transmission for things like electronic radiology. In the world of simulation and digital twins, we have Jefferson Lab just down the road in Newport News, being able to do high-performance data facility experiments at scale, collaborating with other people in other institutions, either in Virginia or around the world. Those are the kinds of killer applications that we're going to need, and we're going to need the workforce here in this region in order to carry that out. So those are some of the things that I think are exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. So those applications are extremely important as use cases, right? We talked about network neutral facilities, and Doug, data centers are now also a lot lately has been called AI factories, right? I mean, that's the new buzzword, right? Which we'll touch upon in a minute. But what good is it a data center without, adequate, robust, scalable connectivity, right? So we talked briefly on the subsea cables, right? So more than 550 subsea cables around the world today, and they have been around for more than 150 years. So subsea cables are not new; they've been around for a long time. But what has happened in the last decade is there's been a strong resurgence of subsea cables. Why? It's very, very simple and very logical if you think about it. When all these data is produced and it's consumed and it needs to be distributed from point A to point B, data centers are not there just to host the data, but they're there to also transmit the data from one point to the other. That other point could be across the street, it could be across the metro, it could be across the country, or it could be across the continent, and that's where subsea cables come in. Eric, let's dive a little bit deeper, right? I mean, some of the statistics we have seen as an example, the Maria subsea cable, one of the most sophisticated one in terms of the technology, in terms of the capacity, upwards of 200 terabits per second, capable of transmitting every movie ever made in 4K in 42 seconds across the Atlantic, capable of transmitting the Library of Congress digitally, 8 times across in 1 second, right? What does all of that mean for the people here? What does that mean for the businesses?
Well, first and foremost, let me take a step back and look at why we built subsea cables. we were connecting people. And in the early days, we were connecting people because the service was voice. And if you look at, for example, the networks that were built between the United States and Latin America, we were connecting continents. The United States invented the internet, and we need to be very proud of that. And so most of the content in the world happened to be here. The users of that data were not only in the United States, the users were all over the world, and in this case, they were in Latin America. And Miami is Latin America in the United States because infrastructure didn't exist in the countries. I used to live there in a previous life, and my web server was hosted in Miami. So you had to connect people and businesses in LATAM to the US. You had to connect people and businesses in Europe to the United States, and so on and so forth. So we, as a country, became the international hub of the internet, very broadly speaking. That's why infrastructure exists. New York to connect Europe, Miami to connect Latin America, LA, Seattle, and so on to connect Asia. That's kind of the way that things were split up. What has happened in these last 10 years that Vinay's talking about is that now we're building networks to connect data centers. That's where the data lives. And we're providing these services not only to the local communities, we're providing those services across the ocean, to Europe, to Asia, to Africa, and so on and so forth. So the cables that are being built today are very different in the use, and they're going after a huge demand to connect these facilities. From a data center perspective, and I typically say a data center without power is just a very expensive warehouse. A data center with power and no connectivity is a very expensive warehouse with power. Because you have to look at this as a point that either generates data, computes data, stores data, and is serving on one side perhaps all of us locally, but on the back end it needs to feed and provide services to other communities, and that's where the subsea cables come in. We used to have, let's say in the eastern seaboard, these two main points, New York and Miami. And as things have changed, and from a previous panel, we're learning that data center operators are going to where there is power. That means that now we need to take connectivity on the back end to those facilities as well. And if you think of a robust, resilient network, you need to think of diversity. That's where Virginia Beach came in. That's why we built to Virginia Beach. Because we said we cannot connect the world, at least on the Atlantic side, only in New York and only in Miami. We need to find another place. Virginia Beach was launched. That's why we have cables there. Then the first cable was built. The second do not come in. Third cable's coming in, and so on and so forth. Now, these people are saying, well, I need to diversify again. And that's why you have a brand new facility in Myrtle Beach. You're going to have a brand new facility in Palm Coast. You're probably going to have one in Maryland. And you're going to start to see these hubs that are going to become landing locations for these new subsea cables. And then they need to be connected terrestrial as well.
Yeah, and I think Eric, what you just mentioned about Myrtle Beach and other locations, right? I mean, obviously that means there is more competition. That means the time to act for us collectively is now. Eric talked about, in terms of the use cases of these subsea cables, and also the fact that diversification is extremely important. So we started with Camp Pendleton, which is where the beach infrastructure was built in terms of the beach manhole, the bore pipes going into the ocean, and then a cable landing station in Corporate Landing Parkway. That's been diversified as a secondary landing location now in Sandbridge, with a similar infrastructure being constructed. So we need to kind of stay ahead of the curve with those kind of infrastructure developments. And also, I think it's important to realize what has also happened in the last decade is that there has been a big paradigm shift. The times of carriers, telecommunications companies building subsea cables are kind of long gone, because hyperscalers and their need for the capacity has been so phenomenal. So the hyperscalers they're already way deep into building these subsea cables, and in turn, they are leasing capacity to the carriers. So that is one paradigm shift. The other one is data center industry is working hand in hand with the subsea cable and vice versa. So maybe Eric will keep going with you. Talk a little bit about these paradigm shifts and what that means to our region here.
So a couple of things. So first is, in order to attract additional landings, you're doing exactly the right thing. You need to look at diverse locations. And Virginia, because you're right there at the mouth of the Potomac, Chesapeake Bay, etc., and you have a lot of military activity, you have a very, very narrow corridor, marine corridor, where cables can be laid. So there's a limit to the number of cables that you're going to be able to put in the water. The other thing is getting permits. The non-technical risks of most of infrastructure projects is not the bits and bytes and the servers and all that good stuff. It's the delays in getting a permit to actually build that infrastructure. And when you're growing at 10x and exponential data is growing at 10x, you cannot afford to wait 10 years. You have to do it much quicker. So working together with the municipalities, with the state government, with the federal government, to get the permits in place is critical, or the owner-operators will go to a location where there's less friction, where it's easier to build. So I think the steps that you're taking here are absolutely paramount, because as you look at the growth of data, you're just going to have more and more facilities that are going to be built. That means you need ducts that go out into the ocean underneath the coral reef. You need to have diverse routes, everything ideally protected and underground. You need to have neutral points to interconnect. So these points that Hunter mentioned before enable international connectivity to connect with terrestrial connectivity to extend to data center facilities. So it's not that complicated. It's difficult to implement. You need power, you need the space, you need the locations, you need the permits in order to get this done.
Absolutely, and those neutral points to interconnect is what we talked about earlier, right? And it's extremely important to comprehend the fact that prior to 2017, what did it mean to not have subsea cables? What it meant was, from this region, if you had to, for example, travel to London, there's no direct flight. You go from here to New York, New Jersey first, or you go to Florida and then fly to London. Same thing was happening with the internet traffic leaving this region. It's as simple as that. That has obviously changed. Now it continues to evolve. Um, Hunter, obviously, AI factories, and everybody is talking about AI, and yes, it's there to stay. And we are in very, very early stages of what that truly means in terms of applications, in terms of training, in terms of inference, agentic AI. Help us understand its implication to the digital infrastructure and specific to this region, what all of that means.
Okay, so I'm just sitting here thinking of, like, how do I analogize this? The best way to explain neutrality and the fact that it's physical infrastructure, how it serves all the people, and that the fact that you need a bird's eye view master plan is the road that we came down on coming here. What was that, 64 or something? Okay. We were driving down here.
Innovation corridor.
You all need roads? Okay. You're building out there.
John has taught me well, guys.
Yeah.
He said globally, that's all you got to say in an I-64 innovation corridor.
Innovation corridor. So I'm gonna play off of that. I think everybody understands what a road is. You're investing a lot of capital to add lanes. That's what we're talking about. Okay. You have a road. What's the use? It brings people to and from. Do you ever plan a road without on ramps and off ramps? No, you do not. So this is fiber. It's the same exact thing. Whatever you built originally, it's not enough anymore. You need more. And that's because of whatever in the past, the internet, the cloud, and now AI. And you need on ramps and off ramps. So the fiber road is connecting Ashburn to Virginia Beach, and you happen to be on the fiber road. You need to make sure that you have access to that fiber road. You need an on ramp and an off ramp, and you need a gas station. I build gas stations, basically. I'm a landlord, and it's like pouring electrons into photons. It's like putting gas in the car. So that's the purpose and how it serves, and it's all about economic development. It's all about land development, real estate, permits, structures, a path, and buildings. Know whether if it's a road or a gas station or fiber and a duct and an exchange point. So getting into the sort of little bit more granular on what the flavors of AI are, some of you might have heard of large language models, LLMs, or it's called training. Largely speaking, that's the people that are chasing the gigawatts in the hinterlands. I wish them well. I don't expect them all to survive. They are raising lots of private credit in the billions. And a lot of the projects won't be done on time or on budget. And when you miss dates, you burn cash. When you burn cash, you get restructured. That is going to happen without question. It's already happening. It's already buildings that were built that utilities never delivered the power to because they oversubscribed themselves, didn't realize it till it was too late, and then said, pencils down, we're not doing this anymore. Meanwhile, somebody went to credit committee and got an approval to build $1 billion building. And now they've got no cash flow because they have no power. That's happening in the data center world. Okay, you don't want to do that. What you all want to do is look at the parcels of land that you have and the power that's available. And I know Stan's sitting over there, he'll help you figure that out. And then improve your innovation corridor with a plan for conduits, ducts, manholes for fiber, so that parcels of land that have access to power can be developed for AI inference, which is very real-time inference, which is very low latency sensitive. That's all about proximity. You will get the highest value for transactions that are done for land for companies that want to build that type of AI here. And then I would just, impress upon them that they must keep it local. And in order to do that, and I don't want to get technical with you all, but there's a way using the internet exchanges to say to these, most of the real-time inference AI companies are neoclouds. They're not necessarily the hypers, but tell them that they must exchange that data traffic here locally to benefit the people. It would be like having an on-ramp to the road with a gas station that everybody can use. Oh, and the last point, in terms of the analogy to neutrality, who can drive on the road? Anybody. It's neutral. Any kind of car, any color, doesn't matter where you're going to work or school or vacation. That's what I do. I build roads that everybody can drive on, and I build buildings that everybody can come in and out of. Set of rules, you got to pay, but it's fair.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said about roads and on ramps and off ramps in terms of neutrality and neoclouds. We keep hearing this term over and over again. Why that's important to the AI world and why that's important for us to have a good understanding of what that means is because these are new age, next generation cloud providing companies that are deploying their infrastructure, compute infrastructure, only on GPUs. GPUs being, companies like NVIDIA and now AMD and others, right? And what they are doing is they're truly, truly targeting AI-centric applications and end customers who are developing these AI apps that need to sit on the AI, on these neo cloud providers' AI infrastructure, which, by the way, need to sit inside of a data center, hence AI factories. So it's all very, very intertwined in terms of how it comes together. Doug, in terms of AI factories or AI and its implication, digital twins, tell us your perspective on, from your standpoint, what all of that means as well, and how you see our region kind of progressing in that realm.
I'm going to riff off what Hunter was just saying about the people and talk about the workforce, because that's really crucial to all this. So at William & Mary, one of the things we think a lot about is what is the impact of AI on the future workforce that we're producing in conjunction with all the other universities around the area. And we've got another little Maslow hierarchy type approach, which is more of a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid is what we call AI literacy. And this is the opportunity for everybody to get to know what a large language model is, get to know what agentic orchestration is, or what prompt engineering is, or what a hallucination is. These are things that are sort of the blocking and tackling of becoming proficient with AI. And what's interesting is we historically, in the university system and primary education as well, do a very bad job of teaching people about this. My son got his driver's license a few years ago, and he had 40 hours with a certified instructor in the classroom and 100 hours driving with an adult in the car before he could get his license. He went to one of the best high schools in Tennessee. He got zero education on AI, and his teachers and his peers told him, don't use AI, it's cheating, you'll go blind. So we got to get a lot better about literacy. At the other end, at the top of the pyramid, is AI mastery, and that's the people who are the PhDs in computer science and data science, the majors in those subjects. And those people play a very important role leveraging all the high performance technology, the training of the models, the verifying of the models, and so on. That's important. But I think really where the secret sauce is the middle piece of this pyramid, which is what we call AI fluency. And that is teaching everybody else who's not a computer science major or data science major how to use AI effectively for their workflows, for their domains, be it in healthcare or law or pretty much anything else. And so that's what I think is really the exciting part, and that's what we're going to have to do in this region, is make sure that everybody who wants to become fluent with AI is given the opportunity to learn how to master it. I spend most of my waking hours trying to become better at AI. What's scary is we have students coming into William Mary who know way more than I do about this, and I try to keep up with it every day. There's a lot of effort retraining our teachers, retraining our professors, our faculty, our students, our administrators, and this is going to take all hands on deck. And if we can play this right, we are going to be a very competitive region. If we don't play it right, not only are we going to be challenged for a region, but there's lots of other parts of the world that are putting a lot more effort into this.
Absolutely. I think playing it right is extremely important. And by the way, just want to make sure all my fellow speakers are aware there's a glass of water somewhere below, they're hidden behind your chair. If you're interested in drinking water, please feel free. Um, Eric, just to kind of close out that thought process on AI, and by the way, please get your questions ready. I'm going to come to you shortly. Eric, this year, 10 new subsea cables are planned around the eastern seaboard of United States, transatlantic cables, right? To kind of even we look at, what AI means in terms of capacity, what that really means in terms of transferring of data across the Atlantic Ocean. Share with us your thought process there and what that truly, looks like over the next several years.
So we're living in unprecedented times. Let me just start right there. We have never built this much. We have 10x data growth. Everything is getting bigger. Latency is again important. Used to be important for the high frequency trader. They could make millions of dollars per transaction in less than 100 milliseconds. But now, as our AI world is going to become distributed, you want to be closer to that end user. And so that distribution of services is absolutely critical. And being close to that source is also critical. But you need to power these facilities by updating their data. So imagine Hunter builds roads and gas stations, I build bridges across oceans. And so on the other side of the bridge is another road, is another gas station, is another data center, and now they need to connect to update all their data. And you need bigger and better roads. Resilience, absolutely critical. It cannot go down. 4 nines, not enough. 5 nines is the standard. And that means that you're going to be building more and more and more. There's a physical limit today to how big these cables can get. You have a ship that's been designed to have amplifiers that look like a little torpedo almost. You cannot just put more and more fiber. You need to get better at building better fiber. So there's a lot of technology that is in the works today that's going to allow us to be able to attend that demand of 10x. What this means physically, though, these 10 systems that Vinay's talking about, and there's another 10 on the western seaboard, is that they're going to land either in locations that are diverse, or they're going to land in locations where it's easy to do business. So it goes back to the principles of permitting. So we're going to see more cables in the New York area. We're going to see more cables. Now, recently, Amazon, who's finally woken up to building their own infrastructure, they announced one between Europe and Maryland. There's others coming, and there's going to be cables that are connecting the seaboard. So quite a bit of activity in that area. And the pressure is on. There's only 5 companies around the world that have the capacity to build these massive networks. One is an American company called Subcom. They're up in New Hampshire. There's a French company called ASN, which is the largest subsea provider in the world today, followed by Subcom, that is building 100% of all of Google's cables. You've got Xterra, you've got NEC in Japan, and then you've got Hengtong Marine in China, which we're not going to see in our geography. And they're all busy. And if they find friction, they're just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think that going somewhere else is extremely important for this community to understand and comprehend, because we already talked about diversity. What's also important is speed to market. If they look at Virginia Beach, if they see that they're not able to, whether it's public-private partnership, whether it's having a diverse location for landing, whether it's the availability of a carrier neutral interconnection facility, whether it's the lack of an IX, all of those things make a difference. There is no magic formula for it per se, but yes, you got to check off as many boxes as possible to be as proactive as possible, to be ready to accept that infrastructure, to be truly successful.
Let me add one thing to that, Vinay. I built, inspired by many people, our esteemed colleagues in the panel, a interconnection facility in Fortaleza, Brazil. If you look at Latin America, it looks like an ice cream cone, and just at that tip is this town called Fortaleza, and there was nothing there. And for technological reasons, most subsea cables landed in Fortaleza because the technology back then didn't allow you to go further. So you had to find a place, land, regenerate the signal, and continue down towards Rio and Sao Paulo. But there's also the location to go across to Europe and connect Latin America with Portugal, for example. And you had all these systems there, and the government put in place this idea that they wanted to improve the GDP, they wanted to have economic growth, and so on. And we were at the time when they didn't really have good broadband access. But because there was this incentive, you had all these companies that started to build, and none of them were interconnecting. So therefore, the quality of the internet was not great. So we took our facility. From the beginning, we were neutral. I followed Hunter's advice. We doubled or tripled the size of the meet me room, and we made sure that everybody understood you have clear rules of engagement. You're not going to connect in the manhole. You're going to bring your fiber and your equipment into the facility, and everybody's going to connect. We brought in DKIX. We brought in Brazilian Internet Exchange. And today, that region is the second largest interconnected region in Brazil, a country of 200 million people, and it continues to grow. Data centers, interconnection facilities, new cable landing stations, and so on. Building an ecosystem is very hard, and it takes time. But you need to bring the players in. You need to bring the companies in, the governments in. You need to have a point to connect. You need to have the right rules of engagement. And when you combine the end user networks, the Coxes and Charters and whoever else is that, all the ISPs connected to a facility. On the other side, you have the subsea cables. The content providers will come. Netflix came in first, then I had Apple, then Fastly, then Meta, and so on and so forth. And today it's one of the world's richest ecosystems of interconnection. And we have a lot of those ingredients right here in this area.
Yeah, and actually we kind of experienced that. I was fortunate enough, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, to be involved with QTS. Anyone from QTS here today? Our company co-founded the NAP as a network access point. This is prior to bringing DKIX into this region. And what that did is exactly what Eric is talking about, is really in a layered approach, enable additional network providers, network companies to come and converge in one place, which is 6000 Technology Boulevard in White Oak Tech Park in Henrico County. And Anthony was a big champion of that when we made that happen. All right. We can go on and on, as you can tell. I mean, this is a topic we're all extremely passionate about. I see Greg in the back starting to raise hands, and that's starting for questions. And we have our first question. Go ahead, sir. If you would be so kind to please tell your name and the company you're with, and go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I'm Jim Kibler with Next Paradigm Advisors, and my background is primarily energy. And I'm intrigued by where Virginia may fall on the difficulty of permitting spectrum for your infrastructure. There's a reason why Texas has 3 times as much solar generation as California does, because it takes 3 times as long in California to get a permit and build it. From your perspective, are we a permitting friendly state? And I realize we've got 100 and some localities. They all have their different idiosyncrasies. But is this a friendly state to build your infrastructure, or is that a loaded question?
Go ahead, Hunter. You should attempt.
All right, so
just remember I-64 Innovation Corridor.
Innovation Corridor, got it. Check. So I'm not the power guy. I need power for my facilities, but I talk kilowatts. I never say megawatt. It's a tripwire. It sets off alarms in places like Wichita and Starkville, Mississippi, where I'm building things. and I also never say data center. I said that before. I build internet exchange points. Have to use very particular vocabulary. Um, again, not to set up the tripwires. But I'll just say this to your question: is Virginia a permit-friendly state? Um, I've fought the entire data center industry or in Loudoun and Prince William counties for not engaging the people and the public and giving back early enough or ever, as they should have. And they gave rise to two people who are pretty famous now in our world, Elena Schlossberg and Julie Bolthouse. And they have organized the data center, the Coalition to Stop Data Centers. And I could tell you firsthand, because I know, because I'm operating in multiple states across the country, that data centers are now NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's not that these people don't want to use their phones and the internet and social media and everything else. They don't want the industrial part of it in their backyard. They don't want to look out their window and see that. And also the fact that their power bills have gone up like 300% because of the way that distribution is subsidized. It's broken, doesn't work. It never worked, but the pain of it is exacerbated with AI. Julie and Elena have a point. And I've spoken to Elena many times. I reached out to her. I think I'm one of the few people in the industry that did. And I think a lot of the data center companies just ignored her and whatever. And then they started getting picketed like QTS did for a new data center. There are projects that get shut down, like no, because local politicians are afraid to approve it because data centers now NIMBY. They're big buildings with no windows. They use all this power. We could have blackouts. They take too much water. They don't create jobs, beautification, the whole long list. And that has only festered and festered and festered and gotten worse. And it started not here, but it started here. It started in Loudoun in Prince William County. If you go back to Rick Boucher, when he changed stuff and 5 Cent Power at Dominion and Buddy Riser and all the great work that they did, that took off. And it was basically unbridled expansion. And now you have the opportunity to look at that and not make the same mistakes. Engage the people in the beginning, engage the politicians, or you're going to have a hard time getting things permitted and approved. Because what's going on up there is they're saying no and they're shutting things down. And that is being felt by others who are starting to feel like some of their states maybe have taken on too much of this. I mean, PJM is here. Obviously, that's like 13 states. ERCOT, though, in Texas, Bill Blevins, who approves all the ERCOT interconnections, I moderated a panel with him a couple years ago at Data Cloud in Austin, and just announced to 300 people in the room, Microsoft, Meta, all of them, we're not delivering power anymore. We told you we would, we're not. I was like, when will you? He said, 6 years, just like that, because they had oversubscribed. They don't necessarily have the community issue, but you're going to find, everyone here, if you don't have a solid plan that includes people and their voice, you will have an even harder time getting things permitted and approved. It's just going to take longer, or just get a flat out no. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Hunter. Next question. Okay, while they're seeing who's asking the question, I think that public-private partnership collaboration is extremely, extremely important to the success of this region. I know we have a good kind of start there. We just got to keep building upon it. Yes, are we ready with the next question?
Scott Brown, Pixel Factory. Mr. Schmidt, I think you hit the nail on the head. You spoke about the next generation. Just because AI kicks out an answer,
A little bit closer to you, Scott.
just because AI kicks out an answer, doesn't mean that answer is correct. So we have to have intelligent individuals to make decisions on what those. Can you speak on that? How you're teaching the kids to comprehend that just because it kicks out an answer doesn't mean that it's fully baked.
You've probably all seen the internet meme that says, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet." Abraham Lincoln. So this is one of the things I wrestled with a lot. When I was young and naive 10 months ago when I came here to William & Mary to be the dean, I thought that my role was primarily to help take these really bright students at William & Mary who don't know anything about AI and help them become AI literate. or AI fluent. I still believe that's important, but I think what is even more important is the following. Increasingly, students are going to come to college here and everywhere who are actually over AI'd. They have grown up using AI as a crutch. They've used it to outsource their critical thinking and their analytical reasoning skills. And even though they're bright and they probably score well on the SATs, they're missing a lot of things we have historically taken for granted with people coming into college. And so I think the real challenge is not so much making people AI fluent. That's actually not that hard to do, believe it or not. The real challenge is to be able to remediate people who have become to rely on AI more and more, to your point, where you're not thinking critically about what's coming back from the machine, and then rebuild those cognitive skills that would have heretofore been done in their K through 12 education. And that is the really big challenge. And that's important also because it's not something that any one school can do by itself. So we have to work very, very closely with our colleagues in arts and science, in the School of Education, in the business school, some of whom think that AI is the mark of the beast. And we have to find a way to help them realize that the real value proposition over time is going to be the upper right-hand quadrant, like it always is in every Gartner presentation. It's people who have great skills in the traditional way and are highly AI fluent. And I call those people the augmented. And that's where we're going with what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think, Eric, I'll give you an opportunity here. I think the important thing is that regardless of the industry, regardless of the business, right? I mean, you have to be digitally enabled. There's a lot of digital transformation that continues to happen around us. In fact, we mentioned earlier about the internet and how its inception happened. So Dr. Vint Cerf, who wrote the TCP/IP protocol 52 years back, who's currently Google's chief internet evangelist, is involved in our region as well as the chairman of the Internet Ecosystem Innovation Committee. And some of us have participated in that program, more to come on that. But I think it's important as we look kind of, Eric, as we look ahead for this region, what are the key success factors to you in the next 30 seconds or so, if you can share that, and what message you have for the community here. Eric, we'll start with you, and I know you had a closing comment too.
I was just going to say, people is the first thing that comes to mind, right?
Closer, Mike.
People is the first thing that comes to mind, and we need it all. And I think putting a good plan in place, we need skilled laborers, we need seafarers, we need engineers, but it's such a rich, diverse environment. You need the lawyers, the finance people, the business development, and it's teaching them in a different way that is absolutely critical. It's not only about the AI, right? But that also means that our government institutions need to understand what we're talking about. Permitting sometimes is lack of people that don't know what they're permitting. Not working, for example, with Team Telecom to get a permit, or with the Army Corps of Engineers, just going to slow down a project. So the people that are sitting on the permitting side, just as an example, could be anywhere else, they need to understand what this is all about. Otherwise, everything will stop.
Thank you. Doug, 30 seconds or less. Your message to the community, and what's the one key success factor for the future of this region?
Well, at the risk of being redundant, it's people. And it's about getting an educated workforce, and it's about committing to lifelong learning. People sometimes say, what does it mean to have an AI degree? What it means is you're setting yourself up to have to reinvent yourself about every 6 months. The funny thing is, all the other fields are about to have that same experience. It's just that the AI people realized it first because they didn't have a choice. But every field is going to be moving really fast.
Thank you. Hunter?
Master planning infrastructure. I didn't ask, but I really hope you guys put some conduit in that innovation corridor road that you're building for fiber, with plenty of handholds and manholes along the way so that you can get fiber in and out of the gas stations, because that's going to help Hampton Roads.
Yeah, and I think I didn't tell, since you said you didn't ask. So we are probably coming back here later this afternoon to talk a little bit more about that in terms of the master plan, from what John told me. And I personally think this conversation has been phenomenal from our industry experts. But I think it's really important for us to comprehend, as a community, as a region, that digital transformation will continue to impact our lives, both personal and the business lives. I call it the human evolution of the digitalization that's happening around us, and collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. That's one word for me. That's the key to success, and we hope to continue to see that. Thank you very much.